Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View.
Welcome to Capitol View. I'm Roby Brock. Thank you for joining us. As expected, this week lawmakers and Governor Sarah Sanders revealed the legislation for her Learns Education Reform Bill. It was a 144-page whopper full of more details of many of the things that she's outlined previously. Here are some highlights. A minimum starting teacher salary of $50,000. That will take Arkansas from the bottom 10 to the top 5 in the country. Pay raises to $50,000 for those teachers making less than that amount. The potential for $10,000 bonuses for teachers who excel in teaching their students. Forgiveness for student loan debt for teachers who locate in high-need areas of the state. A repeal of the Teacher Fair Dismissal Act. 120 literacy coaches who could be deployed across Arkansas to help kids improve their reading success. Education freedom accounts, which will allow public school funds to be used for private and parochial schools, charter schools, and homeschooling. Freedom accounts will be phased in over 3 years, starting with at-risk families first, and would eventually be universal to all students in Arkansas. And one of the bigger revelations from the bill, a price tag. $297.5 million in year 1, $343.3 million in year 2, an unknown amount in year 3, but likely much higher as that universal access to public funds comes online. Joining me now to talk about this proposal is State Senator Linda Chesterfield, Democrat of Little Rock. She is a vice chair of the Senate Education Committee. Good to have you with us.
It's a joy to be here.
Representative Keith Brooks, he is a Republican from Little Rock, and he is the vice chair of the House Education Committee.
This is vice chair morning here.
It's vice chair morning right here. And even more importantly, you are my state representative where I live. You are my state senator from where I work. So, you know,
And we're getting all of those potholes addressed, so it's okay.
If you could also pick up my trash, that'd be great too. So, no.
We'll make a call.
Yeah. All right. Let's begin first of all. The Senate Education Committee is where the action was this week. It's going to be in your committee next week.
I hear that.
Have fun with that. Anyhow, we got broad talking points for about 3 weeks. We finally got some details. The process did move pretty quickly, and there were some complaints about the process moving so quickly. Senator Hickey, even a Republican of Texarkana, says we should slow this process down. I'll start with you first, Senator. Should we slow things down to work out some of the specifics and some more questions?
I do, and I think we need to slow things down so people can at least read the bill. Everybody doesn't read 144 pages in an evening like I had to sit down and actually concentrate on doing. But much of the pushback is about what I don't know. I'm hearing what's in the bill, but until I see what's in the bill, I can't afford to just talk about it. And people want to have a voice. You know, we're in an era now where people really do need and want a voice. So all we had to do was slow it down. The votes are there. We kept making the point. Let us talk to our superintendents. Let us talk to the people back home. Let us be able to fairly share with them what's in the bill so that they will have an opportunity to then digest it and give us the comments that they have about it.
Are you having enough time to answer some of the questions that you think need to be answered in the bill?
Certainly, people have a great opportunity now for input, and I'm fielding phone calls and text messages and emails and have been doing it pretty much nonstop since Monday afternoon. But even before then, you know, there was the opportunity as Governor Sanders had rolled out the tenets of the bill really even last summer, and then adding additional specific details within the last month, few weeks. There's been the opportunity to really look at what those tenets are and how people may have an vested interest in those. So certainly there's great opportunity for us to continue to make legislation better, which is what the legislative process is between both chambers.
There is going to have to be a big amendment put on in the House. This was established in the Senate this past week in terms of some technical corrections, some things that were raised in that committee discussion of just, you know, some things that need to be cleaned up. I'll start with you first, Representative Brooks. What do you think needs to be cleaned up in that amendment? Because you're going to probably be the one attacking it to the bill and explaining it.
There's a very good chance that I am the guy that's going to be doing that. You're exactly right. And I think for people to understand kind of what the legislative process looks like, technical corrections are a pretty common thing that we do. I know that Senator Chesterfield and I probably vote on more technical corrections on prior year's language than almost anything else as a whole. And so a few of the things I think we're going to be addressing with within the amendments are going to be the idea of due process surrounding teacher fair dismissal, ensuring that teachers know that there are still strong opportunities in place for them to defend themselves should that be necessary, and then also looking at the teacher salary step schedule. That's something that we've gotten a lot of feedback on. So those are two of the primary things. Again, there's a number of different components that are being looked at. Just technical language, making sure that it was a may which should have been a shall is corrected, or a shall that should have been a may is improved, and things like that.
On the two things on salary schedule and teacher dismissal, is that going to mollify your concerns?
Probably not. But let me just say, that's not a technical correction.
Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of technical corrections where we do go in and do the may or the shall or whatever, but these are substantial corrections. If you're going to provide teachers and support staff with the knowledge that the fair dismissal bill does not do away with your due process, then we need to make sure that that's done correctly. In visiting with the attorney they're running together now on Wednesday, she said because of the 5th and 14th Amendment, you have a property right in your contract, but that's not clear because this is a right to work state. And Senator Hester pointed out to me that they'll be treated like everybody else in a right to work state, which means a right to be fired when we feel like it. So I need to see the substantial changes because these are more than technical corrections. And with the salary schedule, I think that's going to be critically important because some people right now are topping out at $50,000. So if you're raising me after 30 years, I'm already at $50,000. I've worked 30 years. How am I going to see that I'm valued as much, if not more, than someone who walks off the street and makes $50,000?
Yeah, Representative Brooks, I want to see if you can swing her vote back to your side when that bill comes back down to the Senate.
You have given me a grand task, Roby.
I'd like to say I'd buy you lunch, but I don't think I can do that, technically, even though I'm not a lobbyist or whatever. I think we're going to take a quick commercial break here. We're going to come back and talk some more on the LEARN's education plan. I'm with Senator Chesterfield, Representative Brooks. We're back with more Capitol View right after this.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Welcome back to the program. It's Vice Chair Day on Capitol View. I've got Representative Keith Brooks, Vice Chair of the House Education Committee. I got Senator Linda Chesterfield, Vice Chair of the Senate Education Committee. Let's talk about numbers here. All right, I've been asking for numbers forever. I got them like on the day of the presentation there. 297 plus million for year one, 343 million plus for year two. First of all, do you feel like these numbers are accurate?
I'd like to see BLR take a look at them. Because they're not a part of the administration. It would be a third party look. It's not that I don't trust my good friends over at DFNA, because Larry I think is a great guy, but I do think it is important that we have a different set of eyes put on them. We're currently spending over $2 billion, almost $2.5 billion on education. And when I asked what the amount would be for the third year, I was told 175 million, but that's in addition to what we're already spending. So I think it's important. I know that this is critically important because there's so many good things in the bill. There's some really good things that I want people to know that I'm not this negative person out here saying never, never, never. But there will have to be some corrections that I think are critically important to me. What do we do to ensure that in districts that are already poor, that they can afford the step increases that I think are going to be necessary to keep veteran teachers? And what do we do to make sure that those veteran teachers continue to be assets for those persons who are coming off the street making $50,000? Doesn't lead to great camaraderie if you and I are just making $2,000 difference, and I've been here 30 years and you just got to town. So we have to look at a lot of that. But the numbers, I'd like to see a different set of eyes on them so that we can confirm that the numbers are correct, because it's going to be critical as we look at whether or not you're going to have tax cuts coming up. Right. Will we do a Kansas? Will we be Kansas again when we cut taxes and increase spending, and then the economy goes in the tank?
Could be Louisiana too.
Oh, yeah.
They had some problems on that too. I'll let you address the concerns that she raised there, just about making sure that some of that stuff is in there and is correct. But are you comfortable with the numbers and what you've seen? I
am. And first, I want to just thank my colleague Senator Chesterfield for saying there's a lot of really good things in the bill. That vote of confidence means a lot, and I think that just shows that she's very conscientious about the importance of how we deal with education. That's
I point out she said that in committee too.
Exactly right. And I think she started off off with that, which was, again, I think that's outstanding because the goal is to get this right, correct? So when we look at the numbers, you know, we look at $297.5 million, I believe, the first year, and then increasing the second year, knowing that this is the largest investment in public education in the state of Arkansas's history. Yes, there are additional components to it, but as far as our commitment as a state, it's saying we're willing to invest the dollars. And so you've got kind of two buckets of money. I love the way the Secretary Oliva explains this. I've been on several conference calls with him. A bunch of superintendents were on a conference call last Friday where he talked about this, where you've got your adequacy funding, which that's done on our in a biennium perspective. You've got the adequacy funding, which is consistently increasing, that funds a number of operations. But then you've got this, which is separate money, bringing the salaries up, addressing the other needs such as literacy and numeracy and school safety and things like that. So very confident in what DF&A has put together. Have also been in communications with BLR as well to make sure that those two, I don't know that those entities were consistently meeting with each other to make sure that they're bouncing numbers back and forth and come up with a number that is workable for all Arkansans.
When will we get a year 3 number? Because when school choice goes universal, when education freedom accounts go universal, I'm not saying everybody's going to take them up on that, but that is going to substantially increase from the smaller universe of people that are going to qualify in year 1 and year 2. What's a preliminary? You got anything? I mean, y'all surely look at some scenarios.
Sure.
And the data. Go ahead.
Well, when I asked that question of Robert Breck, he said 175 million. I'm not sure what the 175 million is made of. And then there are some parts of the bill that says if we only have this amount of money, then it will be on a sliding scale as to how much money will be afforded. So I want people to know I've read the whole bill.
Right. And there certainly are, to your point, and that's a great point, there certainly are protections in place to make sure that the budgetary aspects of it don't get out of hand. And Robert is probably the most in the weeds person that I know in terms of education financing, and so he does an outstanding job of explaining. I'm sure that he'll have a lot of questions to field in the House committee this coming week on that.
Robert Breck, State Budget Director over at the Department of Finance and Administration. Yeah, because there's a lot of assumptions in there, and this prorating thing that you brought up there. So it's basically there's going to be a set amount of money for these education freedom accounts, and right now it's I think it's based on 90% of foundation funding,
Correct.
which is around $7,400 a year. That number will probably go up each year, but you could reduce that 90% investment if more people than expected tap into
Yes,
the
and
program.
really, you're taking off of data on other states who've had a universal ESA, which has been extremely successful in the states that have done it. But the take rate is pretty minimal. I think that West Virginia, I think their take rate was about 0.68%, if I remember my data correctly off the top of my head. And so there's an expectation. It's not going to be every student in the state suddenly runs to this, because again, most students, if their local public school is the right option for them and their family, are going to choose their local public school, and we want to continue to invest in that.
And if some of these individuals in local schools do run to that, they're going to find that the cost of attending a private school is substantially more than the $7,000 that we currently allocate. I think what was troubling to me in the budget in the bill is as we went through the bill, a price was not affixed. Ordinarily, as we go through the sausage making of legislation, when we talk about early childhood, this costs this specific amount of money. We're going to have to hire other vendors. How much do you anticipate that's going to cost? And as I looked at the bill, I kept expecting that would be broken out. And so I could take a good look at it and say, they anticipate spending this much on this much on this. I'm one of those in the weeds people who believes that if you're going to tell me you're going to do this costs this amount, this costs this amount. How much are the literacy coaches going to cost? How much are the vendors going to cost? How much is pre-K? How much is the transportation going to cost? We have an overall figure, but we don't have an in-the-weeds figure as to which one of the items in the bill is going to cost what.
And I believe the fiscal impact statement actually breaks it down by category. So it does break it down based upon what's being allocated for those different components, the literacy coaches, and within the legislation, there's a specific line item that talks about what their salary level would be, and then the different things that are allocated for transportation, for the different. So that is broken down in the fiscal impact statement.
In the fiscal impact, but not in the bill.
Gotcha.
And fiscal impact is not legislation.
Well, you may have to draw a line and connect the dots there. I don't know.
I'll just scribble through that again in my good time.
Light reading over the weekend.
Oh yeah, I love it.
All right, let's talk about accountability, because I think this issue was raised too. Senator Hammer raised this, Senator Hickey raised this in the Senate. the money from public schools goes to private schools because a student and their parents choose to do that. What's the accountability for the private schools? I know what the accountability is for the charter school, but I don't know what the accountability is for a private school and for maybe even homeschooling.
Sure. So, from a baseline standpoint, the accountability is that they have to take an annual exam, just like your students in public schools do. Have to take an annual exam. It could be the same one that is administered by the state board, that local public schools, or a nationally recognized norm reference exam that would be something that gauges performance in literacy and math at least. And so you've got that expectation. Then you also have the expectation of, from a hiring standpoint, there's an accreditation expectation for schools as well. And so
What's the penalty if they're not meeting it, though?
The penalty if they're not meeting it?
If a school is not producing students with a certain level of achievement, does the money get taken away from them?
Sure. There is language within the bill that would say that if the school is not meeting the expectations, that the student would lose their opportunity for the EFA.
Are you satisfied with that?
Well, I'm concerned because I don't think we have a level of accountability in open enrollment charters, simply because in the last round of meetings before this charter school group that chooses, we had a number of schools that were D's, and yet they were renewed for 7 years. We can't do that in regular public schools. We're taking over public schools. I do appreciate that transformation thing allows those public schools another step before they're taken over. But right now, even in our charter schools, they're not treated the same. Little Rock got taken over for having 6 schools in fiscal distress. Sad to say, when we came out of state control, we had 15 schools.
Right.
So that process is not working, but I want to see more of that accountability, not only for the parochial school or other private schools, but also for the charter schools that we currently have.
Could that get worked out in rules and regs, do you think?
I think it's going to have to be worked out in legislation, because I do believe that after 2 years or 3 years of being a D school and you're a charter, your charter ought to be taken away. But that's
and I think
not
that's
in
something
law.
that I believe even in committee, Secretary Oliva addressing that question said that is certainly something we should take a look at, because
Right.
I think maybe even the
think
idea
I
of
brought
the
it
charter
up.
schools was brought up, and I felt like he gave a fairly strong response to that's something we should look at.
I'm smelling a bill that you guys might be co-sponsors on.
I would work with Senator Chesterfield on anything.
I would work with him too. I've just truly enjoyed working with the representative, because he is one of those persons to whom you can go. You don't always have to agree, but it is important to be able to talk. And a part of this process has been that we have been specifically excluded. That has really just chapped me greatly, and I think I expressed that. But I'm the only one left from Lakeview. There are reasons we put things in place. Some of those are being taken away, and I think change is necessary for life. But ask me why we put them there in the first place. And it will be interesting to see if the courts will go along with what we're saying, if it is indeed adequacy, and I hope it is.
I got to wrap it up there, but Lakeview is a topic we haven't got to, but we will get to it, I promise you, at a later conversation. Representative Brooks, Senator Chesterfield, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Roby.
so much for having us. It's a joy.
We're back with more right after this.